Robert,
Hey, how's it going?
really good. Sorry I didn't get back to you in time. Hopefully this is a good time. This still works.
Yeah, it still works.
Yeah. So you guys are really busy with the ICO right now?
Yeah, actually, and because of sort of last minute regulatory stuff, it's getting bumped back at least a few more days again. It was actually supposed to be tomorrow that we launched, but
That's what I thought. And that was originally postponed from what, the 16th or something, right? Or some other day.
it went from the 8th, and then we decided to. I'm not totally in the loop on the sort of where
Hmm.
the organization's being I don't know what the technical term is. Originally, it was supposed to be in Gibraltar, and then it's moving to Liechtenstein or something, I guess,
Oh,
for
really?
where the banking and regulatory systems are most favorable for a project like this. And then, even though most of us are from the U.S.,
Hmm.
and then yeah, or not U.S., from North America, and so yeah, I don't know the exact details of why I need to bump back, but all of our smart contract stuff's technically ready to go as soon as the legal stuff says we can hit the start button.
Well, it's really amazing to me with the rapidity or agility at which things are happening because I was in touch with a Jean this morning and she said the platform was still being coded. So I thought, wow, geez, that's really high risk, to still have stuff encoding and then immediately launch, days afterward. That's different from the way I'm used to doing software.
Well, we've been sort of testing it with like a test smart contract area with test
Yep.
tokens and stuff,
Yep.
and but it was just on this morning's team call that the developer kind of working on that stuff confirmed that all the tech stuff seems good and fine. So maybe you talked with her before our call and she didn't have that
No, it
info.
was just like an hour or two ago, maybe, maybe less.
Oh, okay. Yeah, lots of crazy moving parts, but if
I
the
mean, a new platform of trust, needs to be really solid when it's first out there.
Mhm. Well, these particular tokens are just temporary ones that are basically just receipts that convert into the actual holo fuel later. So we're not really
Well,
relying entirely on this system forever. It's just sort of for now for the funding phase.
right. I also wasn't really aware of what it meant not to use Coinbase. I have a Coinbase account, but I was reading there not to use it as a place to exchange coins for these ERC20 tokens. So
Hmm.
there's not enough in the FAQ about that. It seems to me.
Okay, I can take that feedback and make sure they got it. I use Coinbase, but I also like all of our guides and walkthroughs don't recommend using that. So, but actually,
So that's where you're actually going to hold your ERC20 tokens.
no, I think well, truthfully, I haven't gone through the guides myself. I've been working on other stuff, but I think they're using some. I think it's MetaMask and some other way that you get an Ethereum wallet, and then you use MetaMask, which is like a Chrome extension or something.
Yeah, I think there were like three or four other recommended exchanges and wallets that were itemized. I don't have accounts on any of them. I just have Binance and Coinbase.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I have Coinbase, but technically in Canada, I can't even get my money out from Coinbase. So I have to like shift it off of there in order to get it out. So I was going to have to figure out another option anyway. So I think
So you need to
Coinbase is,
launder through some U.S. account or
I,
some other.
I don't know how it works. I didn't fully, I only bought a little bit of Ethereum a little way back, but
Yeah.
just to play with
Okay.
it. But
Well, I know you've been requesting this chat for a couple of weeks, so apologize for taking so long to get back to you.
yeah,
Uh,
well, I'm a little rusty of what I was thinking, but I know that I went to a hackathon out in San Francisco, or just north of there. It was my first time out in San Francisco, and the topic of that sort of seemed very much in line with what some of the stuff I've heard you saying you wanted to create.
yeah.
So that's and apps are sort of living in chat channels in our Mattermost for right now. So that one I think was called Touch Points. Um, we had a client at this hackathon that we were sort of prototyping an app for, and how this would, I guess they have like a production line for kind of it's it's like these dried foods, but they do it in such a way that it doesn't lose all the nutrients. So you get like these really
Like
colorful.
cold chain kind of application.
A what? Sorry.
Do you know the term cold chain? In other words, foods that need to be refrigerated and they need to make sure that they don't go above a certain temperature throughout their delivery cycle. It's called the cold chain.
Oh, well, I've heard people that have a diet like that, but this one's called Just One Organics. Actually, I have the card from there, no, what's neat about it is they'll take, say, fruits and vegetables that grocery stores won't buy from the farmers because they look weird or some other reasons, and then they wind up like, I guess, blending it, or I forget the technical term they use, and then they kind of put it through this system that in the end it's just like a dried fruit crystals that hasn't lost very much of the nutrients in it. Mm-hmm. But what they were wanting, well, they're trying to work towards being sort of like a teal organization, and one thing they're hoping to do is, or what we were prototyping this app for, was using not QR codes, what's the new, NFC tags. They wanted to create like an app to use within their organization, so that when they're either doing QA scanning of different bottles and stuff, that they had an app that could sort of let them scan things. So we were looking at how that could be a Holochain app, because it's kind of neat, the structure under Holochain, as I was learning from this hackathon, because I'm not fully in the dev team. I've been more on the like social media and other facets of it, but
cool.
It's almost like a graph structure, or at least the DHT is. We have this thing called links, where you can basically say from this hash to this hash and label that link, like give it a string, and then you can basically query those later to pull up pointers that exist in the distributed hash table, which is kind of cool.
So what's is Touchpoints the app that you thought might be relevant to my set of interests, or is there a different?
No, this actual event they were calling it like a value accounting event, where we were more talking about like, how do we externalize and visualize more facets of value than just money itself. And that one of the organizations they talked about, I think I sent a link, had something called a Associate's Letter of Understanding or something, and that was one of the things they pitched, that hey, we should create an app that does something like this, and that reminded me of I think it was CCCs.
Yeah,
where it'd be neat. Yeah, so it'd be neat on a Holochain app, like for me, my agent and my hash on the DHT, and you, like we could basically, like that's what those links things are.
Yeah, we talked about that last conversation, right?
Yeah. So
I'd love to get active on that if there's a group that is interested in that, or if I can actually just get myself up to speed on the Holo, SDK. I got onto the GitHub repository this morning on that.
Okay, actually, I'm out of that event. Well, we call our teams sort of like do-ops, that it's like a little co-op, but it's around some area of work doing something. But it's all about sort of refining and streamlining the developer onboarding materials, because it's going to be a lot of people that need to learn how to create these apps, because it's a whole new world of building things. So so yeah, I can definitely help.
Language bindings as well. Obviously there's probably Python bindings, but what existing language bindings are there, and which ones are on the backlog, and who's working on? I mean, that's just, I don't know. I used to call that sort of stuff SMOP. Have you heard the term SMOP?
No.
No real Nobel Prizes need to be won. SMOP just stands for simple matter of programming. It's just, brute force time getting it done. SMOP.
Okay. Yeah, I think the back end right now is in Go, and then for creating sort of Holochain apps, you can use like JavaScript or I think Lisp. And then
Lisp. There you go. That's right. I remember when I first talked to Arthur and his sidekicks, I was all over Lisp. And in fact, I'm going to go do that right now. Yeah. It's rare to find somebody today that believes in the power of Lisp and the promise of Lisp. Well, that's another thing that really jazzes me about the Holo stuff.
Cool. Well, I don't know. there's still so much in the sort of programming world that I need to dive into. So I've never done Lisp. I know it's a
I'm a
functional
Lisper from way back in the 80s. It's a phenomenal language
Oh.
that fortunately very few people understand, but that's an advantage and a disadvantage, unfortunately.
I think I saw, oh wait, maybe that was a different language. I saw a video of a guy talking about like a language that he either helped develop and he's been using it for 30, 40 years, but I don't think it was Lisp, but I think it was a functional one, something like, anyways, it's an interesting.
Well, the big functional ones are Erlang or Haskell, you know.
Oh, Erlang, that was it, Erlang.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the reason for reaching out wasn't just that.
Well, if you like, jog your memory and then call me back if you don't have it.
Oh no. The other thing was because I know you do co-browsing, and what we're trying, like part of this do-up that we're creating for sort of improving the developer onboarding materials. We're doing paired programming sessions, and I think it'd be awesome while recording those if we had a facility or like an affordance to do co-browsing.
Let me look into that, because at one time, probably 3 or 4 years ago, we did have a publicly available free trial co-browsing server where anybody could just download the browser extension and start up a co-browsing session within a matter of seconds. Unfortunately, that got to be kind of high overhead because people couldn't figure out a certain number of glitches with it. So we took it down about 2 or 3 years ago. But let me see if I can resurrect it. I would say right now it's in the 3 to 5% probability range, so don't count on it. But I'm going to look into it because, yeah, there are plenty of opportunities for co-browse. And in fact, I've been trying to like break it free of my company so that I could actually launch something just purely co-browse based. And I still think it's a viable thing to do, because there are a number of co-browsing options out there, but none of them are as, in my opinion, as elegant and easy and slick and robust as what we did. So, of course, I'm very biased. Let me give that a shot and see if it happens. I mean, heck, we make a little bit of a bubble on any of the Holo stuff, ICO or any of the other stuff. You know, maybe I can just buy the rights for that from the company, you know, and launch it out. So that's another scenario that might be attractive.
Cool. And is there any other ideas you have for, because we've done a couple of these sessions so far, and it's been kind of weird because we're just sort of screen sharing and we're not really looking at the same code. And somebody said, oh, there's this thing with Atom where you can like, forget what it was called, but you can be in the same sort of Atom coding interface, so we can at least be co-editing the code. But I think it'd be neat because sometimes we'll like, oh, we got to figure this out, and somebody's Googling something, and it'd be awesome to just like be on the same browser together, or at least to play with that.
NetSuite. I'm not sure if you know what NetSuite is, but NetSuite is a IDE for Java that allows pair programming through a plugin directly in the IDE. So let's say you and I are both NetSuite users. We can both have NetSuite up and go into sharing mode, and then essentially be very closely pair programming. Okay. And that's the sweet spot for that particular plugin. And I think it's got a browser built in. So if you want to look into that, or I could look into that for you, but in NetSuite was actually targeting exactly the use case that you're talking about.
Okay.
Although it is a downloaded app. So if people don't want to download anything, that might be a problem. But for 2 developers who are actually writing code, you know, having an IDE is not unreasonable. Mm-hmm. You know, and having an IDE that allows you to do pair programming is also not unreasonable. That was the strength of NetSuite, by the way. Sorry, not NetSuite, NetBeans, sorry.
Oh, NetBeans.
Yeah, not NetSuite, sorry.
Cool. Because some of, like the role I've been playing, since I'm not exactly an expert, I'm sort of tuning into these to learn as I go, is sort of just taking notes. So, and sometimes I just want to, say, copy a piece of code that somebody else had typed and paste it into the Zoom because it keeps it all timestamped.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking co-browsing would be cool, because sometimes my partner in these videos will jump off to the browser to go search something, and I don't want to have to remind him like, oh, copy your address bar URL and paste it into the chat. If we were co-browsing, I could just do that myself.
And not only that, co-browse presents an entire transcript of your entire session, including all the URLs that you visited. So you can later on go into that and just take a look at everything that happened, you know.
Oh, so
down to every keystroke, in fact, if you want.
Oh, but it's not recording video, is it? It's just recording the co-browsing session?
Yes, that's right. Because we don't take the overhead to record all the bitmap video, but we record all the content and URLs. Okay, so content meaning what you type and all the events that you generate, so that it's replayable and replayable with actual real live sites. So it's not taking a snapshot of video at all. So anyway, that's just the way our particular co-browse was conceived.
Cool. And sorry, one more question, because this co-browsing idea, I've never played with it, but it just sounds super interesting. Are you like piggyback? Like if somebody changes the tab, do you change the tab with them, or you can be in your own tab sort of, and then decide to jump back to where
co-browsing in its current form works on a single tab. Okay. So pop-ups and additional tabs, you have to sort of specifically allow that in order to have that be in the same session. So we can actually set up parallel sessions. So if I start here on one tab and then start up another session on one tab, you can have two co-browse sessions going. So experientially, it looks like the same thing, but it's not part of the same session. They're two separate transcripts that are created for each of those different tabs in its current form. Okay.
Oh, and I guess the other thing I wanted to bring up with you is just I've been missing a bunch of those GCC calls, I think. And
it's easy to do that because there's 4 of them a week, and each of them takes about 2.5 hours now,
Oh, okay. So yeah, is there a particular one that has a common theme that would be best for me to tune into?
I would say the one that most would be, it depends on your interest, okay? Because GCC is very broad. And let me describe the 4 different calls that are doing each week, okay? There's a Sunday call, which is called unblocking. So it's basically, how do we keep ourselves from moving faster or moving together more quickly or towards a thing, okay? So that's called the unblocking call on Sunday. On Tuesday, and that's moderated by Doug Breitbart. On Tuesday is a call that I call barn raising. So it's like, hey, I want to bring my hammers, you might want to bring your nails, somebody else might bring a window, somebody else might have to bring a design or a schematic. So it's really designed towards having the barn raising kind of conversation. And so, people who have work and who have offerings, who have specific design ideas or, constraints, bring those to Tuesdays. And we're really trying to create artifacts that really represent what GCC is trying to do. And the eventual goal, of course, is this global governance model. So we're trying to use that as a focus. The Thursday call is very free-flowing, no set topic. It's basically for us to just get to know each other.
Okay.
So it's a very relational kind of conversation. And then recently, just in the last couple of weeks, oh, by the way, so the Thursday call is non-moderated. It's basically a peer-to-peer call, okay? The Tuesday call, the barn raising call, by the way, I moderate.
Okay.
Then the Friday call, which is in the afternoon, it's the only afternoon U.S. time call, is at 2 p.m. California time, and that Tammy Lee Meyer moderates that one. And that's a more, sometimes it takes the form of an onboarding call where people who are new get to be introduced to the way GCC has conversations, but it also includes a more specific format, which is one-on-one on N. So what it means is 1 and 1 have an interchange of what they're bringing together and try to find complementarity. But then there's potentially other participants who then learn from that and also can then chime in with specific guidance or questions. So it's basically for the 2 people to explore 2 projects, mini projects, whatever, to explore complementation and project alliance / collaboration, but for others to potentially see possibilities out of that as well. So it's a chance to dive deep into 2 specific projects, but for the community to learn at large. And so those are the 4 kinds of calls that now GCC has every week. And it's quite an investment, it's like 8 to 12 hours per week. And that's not counting post-processing, review, abstraction, summarizing, and all the threads of conversation follow-ups, which if you're in the group, which I think I invited you to, you can see there's actually quite a bit of follow-up in those discussion threads every week. And you can sort of see that sometimes I'm just posting questions, sometimes a little bit pokey, sometimes Take Me is a little bit pokey. But anyway, it's just, because we don't yet have a governance model of how we show up. So certain people take certain contributions some ways which are not intended. So that's all the stuff that we're trying to work through. And especially in the unblocking session, we're trying to work through some of those. So that's a quick summary of all the 4 calls each during the week. And some people arrive and depart within an hour because they got to go to other things. But if you stay for the whole thing, I don't think recently any call has been less than 90 minutes recently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, just based on scheduling and stuff, probably the Thursday one would be the first one I can probably jump on.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically for you to get a sense of whatever the heck you want to bring to that conversation. Thursday is very free-flowing, very free-for-all.
Cool. And this is, I don't know, I saw that global challenges thing when it was floating around, and that's what this is around, right?
Yes. That's the, in April, they're going to announce, whoever the winner is. We don't really much care who the winner is because there's 14,000 submissions. We're just basically trying to take that premise and run with it or walk with it, saunter with it, basically.
So it's not that, like, you've already made a submission or something, right? It's not like you're all still working on
September 30th of last year, we submitted I think it was the 30-page proposal that went in, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So regardless of what happens there, this group is just going to do what it said it was going to do anyway.
Exactly. And curiously, because we did 2 things. We got the Global Challenges Collaboration name in Facebook. And I also booked myself, reserved, globalchallengescollaboration.com or .net.info. So we actually have .info up, and it actually is where you can find our 30-page submission. It's all right there, okay?
Oh, okay.
But because we have the Facebook domain, people, I suspect, who responded to that Global Challenges Collaboration are finding us and joining us. So we're getting some fairly regular, like 3 to 5 new attendees per day, it looks like, so it's been kind of dynamic. Yeah.
Cool. Actually, and that's good that we touched on that because there's a bunch of people in the Holochain space that probably aren't aware of that really want to work on governance type stuff. And I was just on a call the other day when this group is going to try and, I guess, map out a bunch of different collaborations and create some sort of directory of sorts. So I'll definitely bring that up.
You might want to give them a small caution in that we haven't yet come up with a lot that's concrete. Now, what I'm trying to do is seed that conversation with the minimum possible suggestion, okay, the MSG, okay? So that comes in the form of how-tos. So I take a small little use case or user story and say, here's a proposed how-to, how we do that. So there's a how-to called how to write how-tos. There's a how-to called how to find how-tos. There's a how-to that says how to adopt how-tos. But then there's other ones called how to make a decision, how to identify who's in and who's out, how to be a member in Facebook, how to participate and show up in meetings. So, then there's a number of proposed how-tos that don't yet even have any content. So that's a minimum suggestive, non-prescriptive, structural stuff that I'm trying to seed into that conversation, okay? So it's getting some recognition for being a way to get started because people don't want to come in and read these big charters or mission statements or contracts or rules of engagement, right? So these are written up in such a way as to be minimally guidable, minimally principled, and sort of touch at the kind of values that might underlie some of what we're trying to do. So anyway, give them a sense that, it's still an experiment, and I'm really kind of pushing the how-to format. I don't really care what we call it, but it's kind of a micro guidelines approach to coming up eventually with something that's hopefully going to help us scale.
Well, that approach makes sense to me because when I'm thinking of the person that's sort of spearheading this other governance thing, that's what he has right now is, as you described, like this big long document where he says, hey, give it a read, where I think what you're suggesting makes a lot more sense, especially if you have some sort of map or something that says, hey, start here. And
yes, I've got an index to all of them, and I've got a guideline for how you write them, how you refine them, how you adopt them, how you suggest revisions, so, and they're all very short. My whole point is to be very short so it's easily consumable. And by the way, adoption is not required. It's basically a form of kind of shepherding, but it's not enforceable. It's not prescriptive. It's not punitive. There's none of that going on. Okay.
Cool. And this is all within the GCC context, or this?
Yeah, that's where I've put it. But what I'm really bringing in is all the stuff that I'm calling collaborology.
Okay.
But I'm not necessarily calling it collaborology in the GCC context. Okay.
So how do I find it though through GCC if I go looking? Or?
Excellent question. So are you in our Slack? I think I might have invited you to our Slack.
I have a lot of.
We haven't adopted Mattermost in the GCC yet, but let me double check and see if you're there. I don't think
Probably
you're
not.
there.
No.
Let me invite you to our Slack because there's this channel called #HowTos.
Oh, okay.
And let's see. There's also basically the index lives as a Google Doc, but I'll invite you to both the Slack and the Google folder directory, and then you'll have access to everything. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I think I can sort of see in my mind it'd be great to sort of have an app that helps you build and communicate these how-tos, and then indicates connections between them and suggests how you follow up with revisions, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be pretty cool in my opinion.
Yeah.
In addition to the CCC one,
It just it made me think of, well, it's kind of tangentially related, but check out this hackathon that's going. You've heard of the federated wiki stuff with Ward?
Yeah. Mark, sorry, not Ward, right?
Yep.
Ward's been doing stuff. Ward Christensen?
Ward Cunningham, I think.
Ward Cunningham. Sorry.
Yeah. It's pretty neat. It sounded like it was maybe a little up in the air whether this was happening, but they're going to try and hack together a wiki that's basically a federated wiki on the front end and like the back end of like Holochain. But I think it'd be awesome for sort of what you described, where you can either choose to adopt and bring in one of these how-tos into maybe your own little wiki, and then they could be iterated and almost in a Git-like fashion find out sort of how they've evolved and who's adopted which version of what. Or
so when these hackathons happen, is there any sense in which remote participation is useful, or is it not?
Actually, I think this particular one, they are going to try and set up some sort of remote way to join in. I'll have to ask. I'm in contact with the organizers.
Oh, that's next week. Yeah, I mean, if you do find out, ping me, because I'm gonna try and follow it, but I don't see any real obvious way to do that right now.
Yeah,
it doesn't have a contact us link there.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah.
Oh, it says register free with Meetup. Okay, there I see it. Okay.
This link has changed. I guess the other thing I wanted to ask is just generally sort of, I don't know, since you have or a lot of things that would excite me if we had a little bit of collaboration time, or I don't know if you do paired programming, or just
I'd love to
trying to figure out what you're I'm assuming you don't have a huge amount of time, but what if of your spare time, what you'd have for sort of just open collaboration, and I don't know, maybe there's something in our intersection we could work on.
I like that question, and basically, because I've proven that I cannot muster the kind of resources required to actually launch these initiatives on my own. I've basically decided to just blog / write some, designs or let's say product descriptions or use cases, user stories. So I'm trying to create those. And if those are useful to anyone that then eventually might want to realize them, that would be, I could basically die happy then, Robert.
Mm.
So if you want to help make any of that happen, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, well, I'd say definitely I want to see put the time into seeing exactly what you mean. I'm not or I haven't been really a blogger myself, but if it means just sort of following along with what you're putting out there and sort of seeding it in other places that I'm aware of, and
yeah, I'd love to do that, particularly if I can blog within the Holochain ecosystem so that, there can be some sort of a traceability and provenance, et cetera, et cetera.
Two thoughts there. One, if any of this falls within a coherent, like this is an app that you think would be good to run in a distributed way, then
Yes.
totally just create a channel on our Mattermost and be the steward of that channel. And we can start inviting people to there that are interested in similar sort of directions. The other thing, I don't know if you use Medium, but we have this kind of sub-project in Holochain called Holochats. And it's kind of our distributed way of having conversations around a theme. So if you look for Holochats on Medium, if any of the themes interest you, like, and fit into what you're saying, for sort of sharing your own ideas and designs.
Okay, well, let's see. I don't want to do this in an invasive and disruptive way, but all the things that I would likely propose would be out of an Engelbart inspired vision that we're calling, so we could actually start an Engelbart channel, or I could actually call it Program for the Future, which is what it's been known for the last 10 years, or we could use the name Collaborology. So I don't want to do something that would be turning people off. What do you suggest as far as, because I want to introduce probably half dozen things, and I don't want to create a channel necessarily for each one of them.
Well, truthfully, like, I've wanted something exactly like this too, and I've also been kind of hesitant to like name it and put it on a channel, because in my mind, it does seem like super very open. Like, I would want, like, talk about things about co-browsing or stuff like that. I just want to experiment and play with certain affordances and that sort of thing with communities. So that's kind of how I was contextualizing my own similar desire, was to have a very open co-learning community that wouldn't mind hopping on a call to, like, even play with sort of how you do harvesting, like live harvesting of a call better live and with so I love all the ideas you're saying with like maybe an Engelbart channel, but naming it something that would generally sort of everybody would know what we mean. But
I mean, the other idea, maybe I mentioned this last time. Did I mention TimeBrowser?
Oh yeah, I think so. That's sort of where you can almost, well, I'm probably forgetting the whole context, but you can timestamp.
Let me send you, it's at timebrowser.info. Okay, so let me put that in here again. But it's an idea that basically says, if we have raw record of events or happenings or whatever, okay, then the idea is use that as a substrate for other derivative works. So let's, for example, let's take this call that we're on, right? You know I'm recording this, right? Because that's my habit of recording everything, okay? Yep. So let's say, between minute 3 and minute, 3.30, you said something brilliant, right? And so I want to use that later on and capture it. But, a textual summary doesn't get everything that was nuanced by your statement. So there should be a way to link back to the actual raw record and hear you utter those 30 seconds of brilliance. Because by then, somebody might say, that was not captured in the text summary that Sam wrote up, or some other person wrote up maybe years later, okay? So they would go back and say, what Robert really meant was this, and nobody ever got it, okay? So then, let's say now there's a way to link those blog entries or summaries into more abstract objects, let's say papers, or actual, proposals or designs, okay? And maybe those then roll up into books, or videos, or movies, or presentations, right? So the whole idea is to be able to take, and now what happens is, suppose you've got your audio recording, and I've got my video recording, and you caught certain things that you said under your breath that I didn't catch, right? But that all becomes interspersed so that it's together a more complete view of what exactly happened. Now imagine that not only are we speaking, but I'm taking notes in a mind mapping tool, or you're taking notes in an outliner tool. And all of those are time tagged and can be viewed in the same context with the video and the audio. And suppose now, eventually over time, we have the ability to work on a shared mind map, or a shared diagramming tool, or a shared whatever it is that's a knowledge object that we can create together, right? All of those then become part of this record as well, subject to linking, association, derivative works, et cetera, right? So the whole idea behind TimeBrowser is to say, suppose we had this for the last 100 years, right? I could put a child in elementary school at the feet of Abraham Lincoln, if Abraham Lincoln was delivering the, fourscore and, whatever years ago, address. Or we could be, witnessing congressional sessions, empty, blah, 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 and actually hearing what's going on there. Now, CNN is a rough approximation of that, but that's because they've invested to create that record. We need to be able to do that in a more peer-to-peer fashion. That's what Holochain is all about, right? And create our own version of reality, because CNN is not going to come here and record my life,
Yeah,
So you and I, if we actually are collaborating in this way, could find this useful. Other people may not choose to do so, but for people who want to be able to get back to ground truth and to be able to examine, not from purely intellectual standpoint, but maybe they want to come back and say from an EQ standpoint, why does Sam not follow up on point 3 of Robert's, statement way back in minute 43? Maybe there's some gem that completely got missed, right? So from a collaborology standpoint, there's a reason to have these records of meetings, conversations, chats, whatever. Who's leaning in, who's leaning back, who's actually responding, who's actually just not paying attention, who's, going out and, going to the bathroom, when somebody says something, So those are all ways of understanding an event that a purely textual summary doesn't capture. So that's the idea behind TimeBrowser. Okay. And I think TimeBrowser conceptually is very simple, even technologically is very simple, but imagine having that as a powerful substrate of quote unquote something as close to truth as possibly we can get.
Yeah, and I think what's neat about using it in the Holochain context versus some other thing like a blockchain is that we don't have sort of one global truth that everybody needs to accept of this happened at this time, this happened at this time, and
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're doing your recording of this meeting and I'm doing my recording of this meeting, yeah, there's some
latency
mashup that you can create, and there's latency, obviously, right? There's no absolute sense of exactly this happened at exactly that time.
Yeah.
But that's the best we're going to get, and we got to be able to mash it together,
Yeah. The other neat thing that you were saying is something I've thought about, and it relates to the governance stuff too, is it's kind of like you have almost a visualization of like the decisions you made and the like reasons why, like pointing into them. And then, if you can record back and you go, oh, our whole context is different now. That's so right. We wouldn't have made.
Imagine this applied to fake news, for example, right? Now, my dream, one dream is let's have something like this and let's apply it to all the rhetoric that's going around, these days about, is it the Russians? Is it Hillary? Is it, election rigging? Is it Trump? Is Trump a puppet? Blah, 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 right? If we can hook all of that together and look at, where some of these nuggets or memes come from so that we visually can say, well, this meme only came from this one source, but it's now replicated 20,000 times, as opposed to, oh, this meme has been corroborated by all these various different vetted sources. And, so there's a difference in how you evaluate. Whereas right now with our media, we have almost no visibility to any of that other than we used to be able to trust certain sources. That trust is gone. So we need something better now.
Yeah, and actually, this is part of why I wanted to reach out, because like talking to you about all this stuff just gets me super excited, and I definitely want to like find a way to be working on some piece of this for some part of my hours. So
I appreciate you getting excited, because very few people get excited when I want to talk about these things. So I don't really understand that. Maybe it's in my delivery. Maybe I got to improve how I present things, but I don't get a lot of uptake on some of these ideas. Well, so marketing guy, help me out, Robert.
Oh, well, my aspect on marketing is more social network analysis and data and analytics and stuff than it's others on the team that are kind of writing the copy a lot of the time and sort of figuring out how to say things. But wow, okay. Yeah, I definitely.
So anyway, that was the reason I mentioned is, CCCs and TimeBrowser might be two really easy, really effective ways, in my opinion, to get started. So if I had resources, that's where I would put them right now, just to get going on Holochain.
The other, well, it seems the TimeBrowser would fit in perfectly with co-browsing too, because you can always preserve your context as I was on this tab at this point.
Exactly.
Wow, that'd be actually. The ideas that I had bubbling up a while ago in this realm, I sort of put it all into one meta map. I think I showed you meta maps. and I called it metacog because it's kind of like metacognition augmentation. But it was supposed to be like a way vision. I don't know how to manifest these things. I saw it as like a Chrome extension or a browser extension that is kind of live mapping your browsing sessions on a like a concept map.
Yeah, we need stuff like that. You know,
we'd
right
be
now,
much better than our history, like the Chrome history.
Oh, just the URL list?
Yeah, it's garbage. But, yeah. So I have this whole huge map of kind of, I haven't added to it in a while, but I'd be interested to go back to see what I was thinking about a couple of years ago in this realm.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that'd be really cool. So yeah, if you're plugged into networks and ecosystems where actually, you know, some of these ideas could be exciting and could be like put into practice, yeah, I'd love to play. Let's do it.
Cool. Yeah, well, I think that's how I either first reached out to you or met you, was I was searching for people working on DKRs, I think it was. I was like, I want to find people working on DKRs because I don't want to be in that space. And then it's almost kind of like there's people doing bits and pieces, but not a lot of people like intentionally working on that exact thing that I've been able to find. I think the other people in the space that sort of sound related to this is the Jack Park and they're not like active in the space, but I think that'd be another group that'd be interested if we did some.
Well, I don't know if you know, but Jack's been trying to recruit me for Topic Quests.
That's what I was trying to remember.
In fact, he and I shared an office in Scotts Valley for a couple of years. So Jack and I know each other really well. And philosophically, we're very, very much aligned. We use different words sometimes, but, you know, underlying it, you know, many of the same motivations and ideas. He has a more guild-like take on what happens on top of a DKR, and I have a more, let's say, Engelbartian-centric terminology and glossary, you know, so that may be good and bad. I mean, I'm harking back to Doug, but Doug's terms weren't really easily consumable by others, so that might be another thing that's I suffer from.
Yeah, actually, I saw in that same realm. I saw a video by Ted Nelson recently when he was talking all about something similar to sort of like what you were describing with TimeBrowser. I guess it's the Xanadu thing, but
yeah,
he's had some sort of
for decades.
Yeah, he's had some sort of idea of how to even attribute writings to people, so that you might have some sort of micro transactions as well on this huge mapping of things that have occurred in the digital space. Cool. Well, I don't know. I think I'll think a little further on how to contextualize this, so it's not just like an Engelbart group where most people might not even. Because yeah, we've sort of blown up to about 800 plus people in the Mattermost space now, and there's a lot of sort of, I think, latent energy to sort of go into certain apps once they are sort of contextualized well enough. So
okay, I mean, yeah, provide me some guidance, because otherwise, you know, rather than going after this be all end all catch all thing, maybe what makes sense is the other direction, the other extreme, which is just TimeBrowser, you know, as a very specific concept, or, you know, CCCs as a very specific concept, you know. So provide some guidance. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I'm thinking CCCs might make most sense, because one of the first clients that very much wants to sort of help fund some stuff, like as an actual client, not through the ICO or anything, is from this last hackathon where we did get in the kind of realm of CCCs and making sort of open externalized commitments to things.
Yes. And what I'm excited by is the notion of identity. Once you have these CCCs that are, you know, building up your notion of identity, it's not the only thing, obviously, you know, but I think it's an integral and very dynamic thing. You know, more dynamic than resumes, more dynamic than your list of jobs, more dynamic than even your list of blogs, you know. So, well, maybe not, as depending how often you blog. But yeah, I think as a component of identity, I think CCCs, to me, represent something that could be very useful.
Awesome. Well, I got a bunch more to think about, but I will talk to you soon.
Well, Robert, always fun talking to you. Okay, so let me know how to proceed on all this, and I'll ping you in a few days if just to see if we can get going on a channel where some of this could actually be discussed.
Okay, actually, the one more thing, if it's like, aside from creating an app and contextualizing it as an app, are yours also open for sort of exploratory co-learning calls too? Or you said that potentially you'd be open to
Absolutely.
pair programming or
tell me
something?
more about what you have in mind.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think pair thinking, pair discussion, pair programming, I believe in all of that. That's the best way people learn, okay?
Yeah.
And work
Well,
together.
yeah, even if I don't know, I need to get better at the practice of either like dialogue mapping, or like I don't take notes while writing. Need to say, okay, we're going to have this same call that we just had, but we're going to take awesome notes, or be more intentional about how we're approaching the call as we go.
Our tools limit us a lot. As you know, I've been trying to think of just a few notes, but they're more, memory joggers rather than complete notes. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah,
okay.
I'm going to write some notes now, but I'll get back to you soon.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Robert. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.